Jamaica.
Hmm?
When you hear that word, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably those incredible beaches, sun-drenched, crystal clear water. But are those famous beaches really for everyone? Today we're taking a deep dive into beach access in Jamaica.
Yeah, it's a bit of a paradox. You see those pictures in travel magazines, but access for locals, it's complicated.
We've got legal documents, news reports,
Yeah.
travel guides. We're really trying to figure out who gets to enjoy those beaches and who's left out.
And we should compare Jamaica to other islands in the Caribbean too, right?
Exactly. So we keep seeing this Beach Control Act of 1956 pop up. Can you break that down for us?
Well, that act basically gives the Jamaican government control over the foreshore.
That what? Sorry to interrupt, but
Oh, right. The foreshore is that strip of land between the high and low tide marks. Think of it like the space where the beach is sometimes wet and sometimes dry.
okay, so the government controls that area. What does that mean for actually getting onto a beach?
So the government gets to decide how beaches are managed and who can use them.
So it's not as simple as just showing up and laying down your towel.
Not necessarily. Technically, the public can use beaches that are designated as public recreational beaches, but in reality, those are really limited. Reports say that less than 1% of Jamaica's beaches are easily accessible to locals.
Wow. Less than 1%. That's wild. And even then you might have to pay fees.
Yeah. And it's not always clear where that money's going. Is it actually being used to make beaches better for locals? There's definitely debate about that.
So limited access plus fees on top of that. Sounds like a pretty big hurdle for local communities.
Hmm.
We also see this Prescription Act mentioned a lot. Does that offer any solutions?
It's possible. It's a little tricky legally, but think of it this way. Imagine a community has been fishing and swimming at a certain beach for generations. The Prescription Act says that if they've used it continuously for at least 20 years, they could have legal rights to that beach.
So it's kind of like a historical claim based on how long they've used it.
Exactly. But, and it's a big but, the process is a headache. Lengthy, expensive, needs lawyers, lots of paperwork. It's out of reach for a lot of communities.
That makes sense. It reminds me of what's happening at Bob Marley Beach in Bull Bay. They're talking about privatizing it, even though locals have been using it for over 20 years.
Bob Marley Beach is a perfect example of this whole problem. The community there with this group JABEM, the Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement, they're actually trying to use the Prescription Act to protect their access. But it's tough. They're going up against developers with money and power who see that beach as a gold mine.
Yeah, it really shows that for a lot of Jamaicans, beaches aren't just about vacation. It's about their heritage, their traditions. Imagine if a beach you and your family have always gone to was suddenly off limits. That would be heartbreaking.
It makes you ask some hard questions, like if beaches are part of Jamaica's identity, shouldn't all Jamaicans be able to enjoy them?
Speaking of other islands, we did some virtual island hopping to see how other Caribbean countries handle this. What did we find?
So many different ways of doing it. Barbados is interesting. All their beaches are public. No exceptions. It's just how they do things. It's part of their culture and their laws. Really shows they're all about inclusivity.
That's amazing. But wouldn't that lead to problems like too many people on the beach or damage to the environment?
You're right. Those are valid concerns. But Barbados puts a lot of effort into managing that. They really invest in keeping the beaches clean. They have public restrooms and things like that. And they run big campaigns to teach people how to use the beach responsibly.
So it's not just about making everything public, it's about making it work sustainably.
Exactly. Then you have St. Lucia, a little different. Public access is guaranteed up to the high water mark. But, and this is important, if there's private property that can block access, like picture a resort with a fence right up to that high water mark. Technically, you can still access the beach, but good luck actually getting there.
So the law is on the side of the public, but the reality is way more messy. How about Antigua? Where do they stand?
Antigua is more like Barbados. All beaches are public. Shows they really believe in that shared ownership of natural resources. And like Barbados, they're big on getting the community involved in managing and protecting the beaches.
So Barbados and Antigua are all about public access. St. Lucia's got some limitations. And then there's Jamaica, with its very restricted approach. Makes you wonder if Jamaica could learn from those other models. Maybe there are different paths to a more fair beach access system.
Oh, absolutely. Jamaica can definitely learn from what's working and what's not working in other parts of the Caribbean. But it's got to be a solution that fits Jamaica, its history, its laws, the needs of its people. It's complicated.
So we've got the legal stuff down. We've looked at how other islands do it. Now let's talk about solutions for Jamaica. Our research points to this multi-pronged approach. Looking at legislation, getting the community involved, raising public awareness.
Right. And one big thing is legislative reform. Imagine they changed the Beach Control Act to guarantee public access to more of Jamaica's coastline, like what Barbados and Antigua do. Clear access points, limits on development that blocks access. That could be huge.
So no more confusion about where you can and can't go. That would be a big step forward for sure.
Yeah.
But wouldn't developers push back? No, the people who benefit from the way things are now.
There'd definitely be pushback. Whenever you try to change things up, the people who benefit from the old ways are going to fight it. But public pressure, a well thought out policy that takes everyone's needs into account, that could be a powerful force for change. And hey, Jamaica actually already has a draft beach access and management policy. They're aiming for more public access and better beaches overall.
Okay, so at least they're acknowledging the problem. But how do we make sure those good intentions actually become reality? That it's implemented fairly and effectively?
That's where community engagement comes in. We can't just have policies coming from the top down. We've got to get local communities involved in the decision making. Who knows these beaches better than the people who live there?
Makes sense. Tap into that local knowledge. But how do we guarantee that those communities have a real say in shaping policy and managing their beaches?
There are a few ways. We could set up community advisory boards. We could provide resources and training so locals can participate in beach management. It's about empowering them, turning them from beneficiaries into stewards of their own coastal areas.
So they own it,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively. I bet that would also make them feel more responsible for protecting the beaches.
Right. When you feel connected to a place, you care for it more. And that leads us to another big piece of the puzzle: public awareness. We've got to educate everyone, locals, tourists, teach them about their rights and their responsibilities when it comes to beaches.
Okay, education is key. But how do you reach all those different people? Traditional awareness campaigns? Social media? What are we thinking here?
A mix of everything, tailored to each audience. We could partner with schools to teach kids about beach etiquette and conservation. We could use social media to reach tourists and clear up any confusion about how beach access works in Jamaica. Heck, we could even work with local artists and musicians to create something catchy and informative that really resonates with people.
So make it fun. Make it relevant, not just boring policy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got legislative reform, community engagement, public awareness. What else is part of this multi-pronged approach?
Infrastructure. If we invest in things like parking, restrooms, even places to just hang out and have fun, beaches become more accessible and enjoyable for everyone.
Yeah, I get that. When things are well maintained, it shows you care about the beach. It makes the experience better for everyone. But that takes money, right?
Yeah.
And Jamaica has economic challenges.
True, it takes investment. But think about the return. Nice public beaches attract more visitors, boost local economies, create jobs. It's investing in Jamaica's future.
So it's not an expense. It's an investment that could pay off big time, both economically and socially.
Yeah.
That's a strong argument. Anything else we need to consider?
Last but definitely not least, monitoring and enforcement. We need some kind of authority to make sure the rules are being followed, that no one's trying to privatize beaches illegally. We need to address complaints and make sure everything's fair.
So we need a referee to keep everything in check.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure this authority is actually fair and unbiased?
Transparency is key, accountability too. This authority needs to be independent. They need clear rules and procedures, and their decisions need to be public. That way people can trust the system is fair for everyone.
So much to consider. We've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive. We've untangled the legal stuff around beach access in Jamaica, compared it to other Caribbean islands, and outlined a bunch of possible solutions to make things more equitable. This is a complex issue. No easy answers.
Definitely complex. But it's encouraging to see people in Jamaica talking about this more and more, and there are people out there working hard to find solutions.
That's the good news. And we'll dig into those solutions more in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at the challenges and opportunities they present. So we've talked about changing laws, getting communities involved, educating people, better facilities, and even having someone to enforce the rules. It's a lot. Makes you wonder, though, are there any smaller projects happening right now, like on-the-ground efforts that are already making a difference?
That's a great question. We've talked big picture, but there's a lot happening at the grassroots level that's really inspiring. There are all these community groups actively fighting to protect public access, raising awareness. Like JABEM, the Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement that we talked about earlier, they're the ones leading the charge in cases like Bob Marley Beach. using the Prescription Act to try and win legal access for the community.
So they're really fighting for their community's rights. Are there other groups like that?
Oh, tons. Some focus on keeping the beaches clean and healthy, some promote ecotourism, some focus on education, teaching both locals and tourists how to use the beaches responsibly. It's a real movement, gaining momentum. There's one group that's all about cleaning up beaches and educating people about the dangers of pollution. They've been super successful at getting volunteers. They've partnered with local businesses to cut down on plastic waste. They've really raised awareness.
So it's not just about legal battles. It's about changing how people think and act, making them feel responsible for the environment. That's really positive to hear.
It is, and these smaller efforts, they often work hand in hand with those bigger policy goals we talked about. Think of it like a 1-2 punch. Grassroots activism pushing from the bottom up, and policy changes hopefully creating a system that supports them from the top down.
When those two forces work together, that's when real change happens. Now, we've mentioned the foreshore a few times. I'm still a little fuzzy on what it actually is.
Okay.
Can you explain it again, like in simple terms that anyone can understand?
Yeah, the foreshore can be confusing. Okay, picture a beach like a layer cake. The top layer is that dry sand where you lie out and get your tan. The bottom layer is the seabed under the water. The foreshore is that middle layer, the part that's covered by water at high tide and exposed at low tide. Technically, it belongs to the crown, but it's how it's managed and who can use it that's at the heart of all this debate.
Okay, so it's that in-between zone where the land and the sea meet. No wonder it's such a hot topic.
Exactly. It's a space that's important both ecologically and culturally. On the one hand, you've got developers, they see dollar signs. Prime real estate for resorts and private beaches. They argue that it brings money to the island, which is true to an extent. But then you have local communities. They've been using the foreshore for generations. For fishing, for fun, even for spiritual practices. For them, it's about heritage. It's about their livelihood.
So you've got this clash, economic development versus cultural heritage, private interest versus public access. How do you even begin to balance all of that?
Tough question. Finding a way to balance all those competing interests while also making sure the coastline stays healthy. That's a huge challenge. One idea is zoning. Designate some areas for development, set aside others for public use and conservation.
So create a kind of map. This part's for building, this part's for the public, this part's for nature. But wouldn't that take a ton of planning and negotiation to get everyone on board?
Absolutely. It would have to be a team effort. Government agencies,
Yeah.
developers, community leaders, environmental experts, everyone would have to come to the table. It wouldn't be easy or quick, but it could be a long-term solution.
It's about thinking long-term, right? Not just about what makes money right now, but what's best for the environment and the community in the long run. We focus a lot on Jamaica, but this beach access issue isn't just a Jamaican problem, is it?
Nope. It's global. All over the world, coastal communities are dealing with the same tensions. Development versus tourism versus public access. And with climate change getting worse, sea levels rising, these problems are only going to get bigger.
That's kind of scary. So the stakes are even higher than we thought. It's not just about who gets to enjoy the beach today. It's about who will have access to these crucial resources in the future.
You got it. Beaches aren't just pretty places to relax. They protect coastlines. They're home to tons of plants and animals. They provide livelihoods for people. As the sea level goes up, we're going to see more erosion, more flooding, more salt water getting into the water supply. Coastal communities and ecosystems are going to be hit hard. And that's why fair access to beaches is more important than ever.
So it's a double whammy. We have to protect beaches from climate change and make sure everyone can still use them.
Yep. We need to be proactive. We need to plan ahead. We need to adapt, figure out how to reduce the impact of climate change on coastal areas, and at the same time, make sure everyone can still access them.
It's complicated. But it sounds like there are solutions out there, both in Jamaica and around the world. The key is recognizing that beaches are valuable, not just for the environment, but for people too. And then finding smart ways to manage them so they're around for future generations.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We need to stop seeing beaches just as money makers or tourist attractions. They're a public good, something that benefits everyone.
Like that shared inheritance we talked about earlier. The coastline is a gift, and we all have a responsibility to take care of it and share it.
Exactly. Which brings us to the big question. How do we create a future where beaches are truly for everyone, not just a select few? We'll explore that question and some possible answers in the last part of our deep dive.
Beaches for everyone. That's a beautiful idea.
Yeah.
But it makes you think about tourism. It's huge for Jamaica. Can you really have mass tourism and open beaches? Do they work together?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Some people say that if you open up all the beaches, it'll scare away the rich tourists, the ones who want private beaches and fancy resorts. But I think there's another way to look at it.
Okay, I'm
Um,
listening. But more people on the beaches, wouldn't that just make them crowded and less enjoyable for everyone?
it's about balance and smart management. What if Jamaica created different types of beach experiences? Some areas could be quiet zones for relaxation, others could be for water sports and activities, and you could have family-friendly areas too. That way you cater to all kinds of tourists. India locals still have plenty of space to enjoy the beach.
So instead of one size fits all, you have options, something for everyone. But that's a pretty big shift. Would the tourism industry even go for that? Would the government support it?
It would take a change in mindset for sure, both from the industry and from policymakers. They'd have to be willing to try something new, to see tourism as more than just making money.
So it's about seeing tourism as part of a bigger picture, something that benefits everyone, protects the environment, respects Jamaican culture. Now, we've talked about a lot of potential solutions, but what are the biggest roadblocks? What are the things that make this really hard to achieve?
Well, you can't ignore the inequality that exists in Jamaica, especially when it comes to land ownership and access to resources. A lot of the best beachfront property owned by wealthy people or big corporations, and that often goes back to colonialism. It's a power imbalance that's tough to change.
So it's not just about laws, it's about addressing deeper issues of power and inequality.
Exactly. We need to think about how to spread the wealth more fairly, how to give marginalized communities more of a say in what happens. And then there's the political side of things. There are powerful people who benefit from the way things are now, and they don't want to give up that power. Getting them on board with change, that's a huge hurdle.
So it's going to take grassroots activism, political pressure, a change in how people think about beaches. A lot has to happen. But are there any signs that things are moving in the right direction? Any reason for optimism?
I do see signs of progress. The fact that we're having this conversation is a good sign. People are starting to understand how important beach access is. And there are groups and individuals out there fighting hard to make things better. And remember that draft beach access and management policy, that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
It shows they're at least thinking about it.
So we're moving forward, even if it's slow. Okay, this has really made me think about what I can do personally, even though I don't live in Jamaica. What can listeners do to help?
The first thing anyone can do is learn. Read articles, listen to podcasts, learn about what's happening in Jamaica and other coastal areas. What are the problems? What are the solutions? Talk to your friends and family about it.
Spread the word. Awareness is the first step to action.
Right. And if you're traveling to a beach destination, be a responsible tourist. Choose businesses that care about the environment and the community. Be respectful of local customs. And hey, maybe consider donating to an organization that's working to protect beaches.
So vote with your wallet. Make conscious choices. Even small things can add up.
Totally. And if you're really passionate about this, get involved. Find an organization that's fighting for beach access and lend a hand. They need volunteers. They need donations. They need support.
Use your voice. Use your resources. Make a difference. So we've reached the end of our deep dive into beach access in Jamaica. And I have to say, I'm feeling a mix of emotions. I'm concerned about the challenges, especially with climate change looming.
Yeah.
But I'm also hopeful because people are working hard to find solutions, and more people are realizing that this is an issue that matters.
I agree. It's not just about beaches. It's about justice. It's about sustainability. It's about creating a world where everyone has a chance to enjoy our planet's beauty.
Access to nature should be a right, not a privilege. And it's something worth fighting for. It's a fight we can all join, no matter where we live.
I couldn't have said it better. Thanks for exploring this with me. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your passion. And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on beaches, on tourism, and on our responsibility to protect these amazing places for the future.